Let's have a lesson and discussion on this work. Follow the lesson for free and just pick up the tips from the video. But if you're interested, I do have a sheet music edition of all 25 etudes from Carcassi, and there's a link for that in the description. Etude number 20 presents a significant rise in level. One of the most difficult things about this piece, that especially for me personally, is raising that tempo but keeping the playing relatively clean. And that's definitely something that I'm finding very challenging. And I know I'm having to put these out every week, but I would need to spend a lot of time to really refine the piece. And I will. I'm going to continue working on this one and try to really refine the sound. Because once you start raising that tempo, it's quite difficult to keep it clean. I grade the piece at around the grade 7 to 8 level, because of its length and its relative lack of awkwardness. You know, at a slow tempo, the piece isn't too tricky, but once you raise that tempo, we're talking about a very significant challenge if you're trying to reach the tempos that you might see pros play it on videos or in person. So on the one hand, really great etude for training a number of different musical factors, which we'll talk about in a second. On the other hand, in terms of performance level, you can bring it to very high levels. So the etude really focuses on triadic arpeggios, you know, going through a whole triad, you know, they're A major triad. And that, along with the slurs, the ascending and descending slurs, and the right hand fingering, it all presents quite a challenge, as well as some of the shifts later on. So many musical factors and technique factors to work on in this piece. So how should we go about this? Well, I think the first task, I mean, this is, you know, early advanced or late intermediate. So at this point, I'm hoping that you have certain things under control in terms of the left and right hand. But I think the first thing you want to do is just take the quarter note beat and play the group of 3 up to the next beat. So for example, in that first measure, you know, you just play those 4 notes. And make sure you can play it cleanly and that you can arrive on the beat. And then maybe you can add the next beat as well. And then the next one. And then the whole thing. Now, even in this opening measure, we have a couple of things to talk about. We have this A chord with the hinge bar with the first finger, so it's covering the 4th and 3rd string, while the C sharp is covered by the 2nd finger. We need to do that because we need to be slurring with our 4th finger and our 3rd finger. So that in itself is something to be practiced because it has the potential to buzz and whatnot, so you have to get used to that. You also just have to make sure your hand positions are good so that you can reach that C sharp. If your hand position is misaligned, you won't be able to reach it. So a lot of things have to come together, but I would hope at this level that they've already come together to some extent. And if not, then maybe some more technique preparation is required before you start the piece. But going through each quarter note beat to the next downbeat, is really great in this piece to just make sure you can play it technically from beat to beat, and so that you can just tell at slower tempos if you can play everything clean and orderly. And then you can start stringing it all together. Now I'll just show you, like, you really probably want to work it with the metronome. Once you've gone through it like bit by bit through the whole piece like that, and you think, okay, I can play each beat at least up to the next downbeat fairly cleanly, then you can start putting the metronome on. And I'll just show you, like, on the page here. You can see, like, there's a lot of metronome markings down here, right? Different ones for, like, refinement over here, different ones for, like, reaching certain tempos over there. So really kind of like, once you have the piece technically clean, just inching up that metronome marking bit by bit, and it can be a very long process. You also want to turn the metronome off and make sure you're gliding more towards the center of the measure. Like, I'm really thinking in terms of beats. I'm thinking here, 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 here. But at first, you'll probably want to focus on that dotted quarter. Okay, so lots of things to discuss. I think once we go over the first few measures, that will cover most of the things we need to discuss, and then we'll do a walkthrough of the whole piece. We've already talked about the left hand in the first two measures there, but in terms of the right hand, we have a lot of times here where we have to do a double thumb stroke, and we do just a light rest stroke in order to do that. That way it's ready for the next note. Sometimes they'll be back to back, like in measure 3. Thumb, thumb. So like, it's almost like playing a chord, but you're just sweeping across more than one string. You'll see lots of variation in how people finger the third measure for the left hand. I've decided on a little bit of a scary solution, but I think it's also stable in another way because it just gets you back into position. So I'm going, because the fourth finger is free, I'm just reaching up and grabbing it. And then the first finger is free here. So I just grab that down there, and then I'm all ready for the measure again. You'll see other people do various solutions to this in upper position. And then they're able to get back on the open string of the following measure. I just found this one was the easiest to accomplish with free fingers flowing, and it worked for me. So you can experiment with different solutions, but that's the concept I'm using, is those free fingers. But at faster tempos, it's just a little bit of, well, you have to take some risk and really get it. Getting those slurs on offbeats too. It's so important that you practice those 4-note groups so that your scoop is natural. It's not going to throw you off and make it sound like thump thump, something weird like that. But structurally, from a rhythmic standpoint, it still has to be here, here. Or if you're going to the middle of the bar, that. But making sure you're flowing through those slurs in a natural way. Measure 4 returns. Here's a triple thumb stroke, which some people just might not be used to doing, especially at faster tempos. Making that sound even, so it's a good chance. Just make sure that you're lightening up your rest stroke so it's just like flowing across those strings so easily, right? And then measure 6 is actually, at faster tempos, that really throws me off doing the offbeat slur, along with so many thumb strokes. It's throwing me off right now. Measure 7. Adding a little bit of a writ at the end there. Here. That helps to make the technique and the musicality come together nicely and make it manageable. Measure 9. Measure 16 can sound very strange note-wise at slower tempos, and you know, I double-checked the original publication, all the notes. I also have 4 or 5 other editions of this, and I triple, quadruple checked it, and all the notes are correct. That's what everyone uses. Sounds a little bit funny, but I think like when you're flowing through it at faster tempos, it makes a little bit more sense, but you'll just have to find a way to make that work. It's that measure 16, that double B there, and then it's maybe not my favorite, you know, compositional writing there, but nevertheless, when you just play through it, it sounds somewhat natural. Now, measure 17 gets pretty challenging. This triple thumb stroke. And then that glissando, along with that slur, it's a lot of movement over the guitar. It's a lot of different techniques to keep under control. So again, making sure you can do that. Or you know, just going through it in those small chunks and making sure you can actually play it correctly, and then kind of piecing it together. Is the only way you can go about it. Little things to remember here, just like that, the span of the frets there. On that one measure in measure 23, just so you know, I'm going P, I, A, and then kind of, you know, dealing with alternation afterwards. But I found if I run out of fingers, it's just so awkward. There's so many awkward string crossings. So starting with P, I, A, and then M, I, A, M, I, gets you into whatever fingering you want at the top of the measure. So I definitely put like quite a bit of a writ at the top there. And then almost a fermata here, starting the piece again. It's a nice relief for the listener, but it's also a very nice relief for you technically. Again, musicality and technique can come together there and offer some relief. The last part of the piece here is pretty much the same material. Here it's an A major. So here I decided to play open and then a bar. Just be careful you don't clip that B too soon. You know, you don't want to clip that open B too soon, so just wait to the last minute to get the bar. And make it part of your phrasing. So you can navigate that. Again, adding a little bit of a writ at the end will relieve some of the technical stress of the piece. As I showed you before, I went through and made sure I could play each dotted quarter note group cleanly before I started stringing the measures completely together. When I could start doing that, I started down at 60 on the metronome. And then I ended up, more than doubling that tempo. So just, when I felt comfortable at 60, I put it to 63. And just kept moving up that way. At some point, though, because of the trickiness of keeping the texture clean, I started to split my metronome markings up. I would have my kind of speed training metronome markings, which I still want to play somewhat clean, but I also had a refinement stage. So after I'd reached around 120 on the metronome, which is around this, I started to go back and also practice it at 80 again and try to just clean up my playing all over again, just because it's just the opportunity for messiness just occurs so easily. Little buzzes, little things, little noises from the strings. There's so much like tapping and like sounds from the slurs. There's just so much that you could clean up. And when you see like a pro circuit player playing this and they're playing it at a really fast tempo and also super cleanly, it's very impressive and can be very difficult. So fantastic etude. I'm not saying all this stuff to scare you away from it. It's a great etude, even at slow tempos. So good for your playing, but it has to be approached in a methodical way and also a musical way. You need to turn that metronome off sometimes and make sure you're gliding through the phrases musically. But nevertheless, it's a heavily technical etude for sure, and a real great opportunity for your playing.